In the annals of a nation's history, Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. emerged as a figure of notorious infamy. His life took a sinister turn as he assumed various roles of former police officer, a serial rapist, a burglar, and ultimately, an American serial killer. His grim tale unfolded across California, leaving behind a trail of unspeakable horror. Between 1974 and 1986, Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. engaged in a horrifying spree of brutal violence, committing at least 13 homicides, 51 sexual assaults, and an astounding 120 break-ins. Throughout this time, he skillfully hid his reign of terror behind a mysterious mask, preying on innocent victims who had no idea what awaited them. Dividing his actions into three distinct crime waves, DeAngelo's deeds earned unique monikers from the press. However, these narratives converged to reveal a chilling reality: he was the sole orchestrator of these heinous acts. Law enforcement grappled with uncertainty for 44 long years, unable to uncover his true identity or bring him to justice. The enigma of Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. persisted, casting a shadow over both the innocent and the justice system itself. Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. was born in Bath, New York, on November 8, 1945. His formative years were greatly influenced by his parents. He grew up in a family that included his two older sisters, Connie and Rebecca, and a younger brother named John. However, a distressing event during his childhood left an indelible impact on DeAngelo. As a young child, he was a witness to the traumatic rape of his sister Connie, which occurred in a West German warehouse where the family was stationed at the time due to his father's military assignment. Following his conviction, Rebecca disclosed that DeAngelo had experienced abuse from their father during his upbringing. From 1959 to 1960, DeAngelo attended Mills Junior High School in Rancho Cordova, California. His educational journey continued at Folsom High School, starting in 1961, where he eventually obtained a GED certificate in 1964. His involvement in the school's junior varsity baseball team highlighted his extracurricular activities. However, darker aspects of his teenage years emerged, with reports of burglaries, animal torture, and killings. DeAngelo joined the United States Navy in September 1964, serving for 22 months during the Vietnam War. In 1968, he commenced his academic pursuits at Sierra College in Rocklin, California. His dedication was evident as he graduated with honors, earning an associate degree in police science. The journey continued as he enrolled at Sacramento State University in 1971, ultimately achieving a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. DeAngelo's thirst for knowledge led him to postgraduate studies and additional police training at the College of the Sequoias in Visalia. He capped his educational journey with a 32-week police internship at the Roseville Police Department. During May 1970, a significant chapter unfolded in Joseph James DeAngelo's life when he became engaged to Bonnie Jean Caldwell, a fellow nursing student at Sierra College. Yet, their engagement was marked by turmoil as DeAngelo's behavior took a manipulative and abusive turn, leading to their separation in 1971. The breaking point came when DeAngelo demanded Caldwell's assistance in cheating on an abnormal psychology test, shattering their connection. Following their breakup, DeAngelo's actions took a dark turn as he attempted to coerce Caldwell into marriage by threatening her with a gun. In November 1973, DeAngelo's journey took a different path as he married Sharon Marie Huddle from Citrus Heights. Their wedding ceremony took place at the Auburn First Congregational Church, marking the beginning of their life together. They set down roots in 1980, purchasing a house in Citrus Heights that would play an unforeseen role in their story many years later. The couple welcomed 3 daughters into their family. As time went on, the dynamic between DeAngelo and Huddle changed. The couple eventually decided to separate in 1991, marking a turning point in their shared journey. Between May 1973 and August 1976, Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. found himself stationed as a police officer in the burglary unit in Exeter, a change from his previous role in Citrus Heights. Following his time in Exeter, he served in Auburn from August 1976 to July 1979. However, a disturbing incident marked the end of this tenure when DeAngelo was apprehended for shoplifting a hammer and dog repellent. This misstep led to a 6-month probation sentence and his termination in October. The circumstances surrounding his dismissal were tumultuous during this process. DeAngelo's behavior took an alarming turn. He issued threats to kill the chief of police and reportedly engaged in stalking the chief's residence, further darkening the shadow that loomed over his actions. The earliest documented instance of ransacking occurred on March 1974, when an amount of $50 in coins vanished from a piggy bank. The ransacker's activities primarily centered on unlawfully entering homes, often leaving behind a trail of disturbance and damage. The burglar's modus operandi included rummaging through or vandalizing personal belongings, scattering women's undergarments, and pilfering a range of relatively low-value items. Curiously, higher-value things and money were frequently ignored even if they were in plain sight. A peculiar aspect of the ransacker's actions was the arrangement or display of items within the targeted homes. Things that were commonly taken comprised piggy banks, coin jars, collectible stamps, foreign coins, and personal effects such as single earrings, cufflinks, rings, or medallions. More surprisingly, the list also included 6 firearms and various types of ammunition. Instances of multiple break-ins on the same day were a recurring pattern, with one notable occurrence encompassing 12 separate incidents on November 30, 1974. There were several shared characteristics in these burglaries, utilizing established routes like parks, walkways, ditches, and trails, often involving climbing fences, focusing on prying open multiple potential entry points, with windows being a particularly preferred target. Leaving several points of exit open, including windows, house doors, garage doors, and garden entrances. Placing window screens that were removed onto beds or inside bedrooms, using everyday items such as dishes or bottles as warning items positioned against doors and doorknobs. Employing gloves to minimize the chance of leaving behind fingerprints as evidence. On September 11, 1975, DeAngelo committed a break-in at Whitney Lane, which was the home of Claude Snelling, a 45-year-old journalism professor at the College of the Sequoias. An earlier confrontation had taken place between Snelling and a prowler near his daughter's window on February 5, 1975, around 10 p.m. On the fateful September night, at approximately 2 a.m., Snelling was awakened by unusual sounds. Upon leaving his bedroom, he dashed through the open back door and confronted a ski-masked intruder in the carport. This intruder was attempting to abduct Snelling's daughter, who had been subdued with threats of violence involving a knife or firearm. Snelling took action, but tragically, he was shot twice. Despite being wounded, he managed to retreat into the house to his wife before succumbing to his injuries. Following the shooting, the assailant hastily departed, leaving a stolen bicycle at 615 Redwood Street. In the aftermath, Beth Snelling, who was 16 years old, underwent hypnosis to extract further details about the incident. The Visalia police escalated their efforts to capture the ransacker, pouring more resources into the endeavor and offering a $4,000 reward for information. Surveillance was enhanced during the night near properties that had been previously targeted by the ransacker, yet the string of ransackings persisted. Around 8:30 o'clock on December 12, 1975, a masked individual entered the backyard of a residence located at Kaweah Avenue, an area often frequented by the ransacker. Detective William McGowan was on stakeout inside the garage when he attempted to apprehend the masked man. In response, the suspect let out a shriek, removed his mask, and simulated surrender after McGowan fired a warning shot. However, while jumping the fence to a nearby house, the suspect unexpectedly drew a revolver with his left hand and fired a shot in the vicinity of McGowan's face, breaking the detective's flashlight. Other officers swiftly came to McGowan's aid, but the assailant managed to escape. Among the items seized for evidence were the shattered flashlight, tennis shoe tracks, and discarded loot, which included blue-chip stamps and a sock filled with coins. DeAngelo relocated to the Sacramento area in 1976, marking a disturbing escalation of his criminal activities from burglary to rape. His actions began to concentrate on the then unincorporated zones of Carmichael, Citrus Heights, and Rancho Cordova, situated east of Sacramento. During this period, he shifted his focus to targeting women in middle-class neighborhoods, often during the night. He sought out those who resided alone in single-story residences, frequently situated near schools, creeks, trails, or other open spaces that would facilitate a swift getaway. Although he was spotted on multiple occasions, he managed to elude capture each time, even going so far as to shoot and severely wound a young individual who pursued him. The majority of his victims had either witnessed or heard a prowler on their property prior to the assaults. Many had also been subjected to break-ins before falling prey to his attacks. Police authorities speculated that the perpetrator engaged in extensive reconnaissance within the targeted neighborhoods. This involved peering into windows, trespassing on properties, and familiarizing himself with the surroundings before selecting his next target. Reports suggested that he sometimes entered the residences of his future victims, surreptitiously unlocking windows, unloading firearms, and placing ligatures for later use. Additionally, he would often engage in a sinister routine of calling his future victims, sometimes spanning months in advance. This gave him insight into their daily routines, enhancing his ability to execute his sinister plans. Initially, DeAngelo singled out women who were either alone at home or with children, but his tactics shifted over time to focus on attacking couples. This change in his modus operandi is thought to be influenced by media reports that depicted him exclusively targeting women in solitary situations. He typically gained entry through windows or sliding glass doors, often using a flashlight to awaken the occupants while brandishing a handgun as a threat. After gaining control, he bound the victims with ligatures, frequently repurposing shoelaces or bringing his own, before blindfolding and gagging them with torn strips of towels. The male victim would often be compelled to tie up his female companion before he himself was restrained. The tightness of the bindings often led to numbness in the victim's hands, even after being released. The couple would then be separated, with the female being moved to the living room where she was subjected to repeated acts of rape. During his intrusions, DeAngelo would sometimes spend hours rummaging through closets and drawers, eating food from the kitchen, consuming beer, and subjecting the woman to additional assaults or threats. There were instances where victims believed he had left the premises only to be startled as he jumped from the darkness. Items were often stolen from the homes, usually personal belongings or items of little value, although cash and firearms were occasionally taken. Afterward, he would silently retreat, leaving the victims unsure if he had truly departed. It was believed that he evaded capture by traveling through a series of yards on foot and then using a bicycle to either return home or reach a vehicle. He frequently utilized parks, schoolyards, creek beds, and other open spaces to avoid the streets. The East Area Rapist operated within Sacramento County from the initial assaults in June 1976 until May 1977. After a hiatus of 3 months, he resurfaced in San Joaquin County in September before returning to Sacramento for all but one of the subsequent 10 attacks. Following 5 attacks in Stanislaus and Yolo counties during the summer of 1978, he disappeared again for 3 months. On the night of February 2, 1978, a young couple from Sacramento, Brian Keith Maggiore, military policeman stationed at Mather Air Force Base, and his wife Katie Lee Maggiore, were out walking their dog in the Rancho Cordova area. This location was close to where 5 prior East Area Rapist attacks had taken place. A confrontation occurred in the street, prompting the Maggiores to flee, but they were pursued and tragically shot to death. Given their proximity to the sites of previous attacks and the discovery of a shoelace nearby, some investigators entertained the possibility that they had fallen victim to the East Area Rapist. This suspicion led to speculation that the perpetrator might have been responsible for their murders. The FBI later made an announcement on June 15, 2016, expressing confidence that the East Area rapist had indeed murdered the Maggiores. Following a rape that occurred on July 5, 1979, DeAngelo relocated to Southern California, where he escalated to murder. His first fatal attack took place in Santa Barbara County in October of the same year. These deadly assaults continued until 1981, punctuated by a single incident in 1986. In the initial attack, only the targeted couple managed to survive. They raised the alarm, alerting neighbors and prompting the intruder's hasty retreat. In contrast, the other victims were not as fortunate, succumbing to gunshot wounds or brutal bludgeoning. For decades, DeAngelo eluded identification in connection to these crimes. Consequently, he earned the moniker Night Stalker in the local area before the title was reassigned to serial killer Richard Ramirez. Later on, DeAngelo was designated as the original Night Stalker to differentiate him from Ramirez, reflecting the timeline of their respective criminal activities. In October, an intruder forcefully entered a residence in Goleta and restrained the couple, Robert Offerman and Deborah Alexandra Manning. Upon hearing him mutter the threatening words, "I'll kill him," the man and woman tried to flee when he momentarily left the room. As the woman screamed, the intruder made a swift escape on a bicycle. A neighbor, an FBI agent, responded to the commotion, pursuing the intruder, who abandoned the bicycle and a knife and fled on foot through local backyards. On December 30, Robert Offerman and Deborah Alexandra Manning were tragically found shot to death at Offerman's condominium in Goleta. Offerman's bindings had been undone, indicating a struggle with the attacker. Gunshots had been heard by neighbors, and canine paw prints were discovered at the scene, suggesting the potential presence of a dog brought by the assailant. The perpetrator had also broken into an adjacent unoccupied residence and stolen a bicycle, which was later found abandoned. It had been taken from a third residence within the complex. The year 1980 witnessed further disturbing events. On March 13, Charlene Smith and Lyman Smith were discovered murdered in their Ventura home. Charlene had been raped, and the victims were bludgeoned to death with a log from their woodpile. Both victims were bound with drapery cord, utilizing an uncommon Chinese knot known as a diamond knot. This distinctive knot had also been used in previous East Area rapist attacks, raising suspicions of a connection. Subsequently, on August 19, Keith Eli Harrington and Patrice Briscoe Harrington were found brutally bludgeoned to death in their Dana Point residence. Patrice had also been raped. Although the victims appeared to have been bound, no ligatures or murder weapons were located. The Harringtons, newlyweds of 3 months, met their tragic end in a gated community. It was later revealed that Patrice worked as a nurse, while Keith pursued a medical degree. In 1981, Manuela Whitthun became another victim, raped and murdered in her Irvine home on February 6. Though signs indicated she had been bound before the fatal bludgeoning, no murder weapon or ligatures were found. Cherie Domingo and Gregory Sanchez were the next victims on July 27. Domingo's temporary residence in Goleta was attacked, resulting in her rape and bludgeoning, while Sanchez was shot and then fatally bludgeoned. It was suggested that Sanchez may have recognized the attacker and attempted to overpower him. The assailant had entered through a bathroom window. These tragic events solidified the reign of the original Night Stalker. Lastly, on May 4, 1986, Janelle Lisa Cruz was found dead in her Irvine home. She had been raped and bludgeoned. Authorities suspected that a pipe wrench, missing from Cruz's stepfather's possession, might have been the murder weapon. At this point, authorities were not fully aware of the connection between the Southern California murders. Misperceptions led to a lack of unified investigation. Misplaced leads directed attention towards men close to the victims, with one person even erroneously charged with 2 of the murders. On April 24, 2018, Joseph James DeAngelo was apprehended by Sacramento County Sheriff's deputies. He faced 8 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances. On May 10, the Santa Barbara County District Attorney's Office levied an additional 4 counts of first-degree murder against DeAngelo. Following his arrest, DeAngelo provided a cryptic confession that referred to an inner personality he named Jerry, attributing this alter ego for compelling him to carry out the string of crimes that abruptly ceased in 1986. After his arrest in April 2018, DeAngelo confessed in a police interrogation room, seemingly addressing himself. "I didn't have the strength to push him out. He made me. He went with me. It was like in my head. I mean, he's a part of me. I didn't want to do those things. I pushed Jerry out and had a happy life. I did all those things. I destroyed all their lives. So now I've got to pay the price." Detectives bypassed DeAngelo's initial requests for legal representation, justifying this by a legal theory that this potential violation of Miranda rights would be justified, with the understanding that the interview couldn't be used against him in court. DeAngelo couldn't be charged with the rapes or burglaries due to the statute of limitations having expired for those offenses. However, he faced charges of 13 counts of murder and 13 counts of kidnapping. DeAngelo was arraigned in Sacramento on August 23, 2018. In November 2018, the collective estimation from prosecutors in 6 involved counties was that the case could incur a cost of $20 million to taxpayers and extend for a decade. During a court proceeding on April 10, 2019, prosecutors announced their intention to seek the death penalty. The judge ruled that cameras could be present in the courtroom during the trial. On March 4, 2020, DeAngelo offered a guilty plea with the condition of removing the death penalty from consideration, which was declined at that time. On June 29, as part of a plea agreement to avoid the death penalty, DeAngelo pled guilty to 13 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances, including murders during burglaries and rapes, and 13 counts of kidnapping. On August 21, 2020, DeAngelo was sentenced to multiple consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. After hearing days of pre-sentencing victim impact statements, DeAngelo briefly apologized and said, "I've listened to all your statements, each one of them, and I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt." In November 2020, he was transferred to the North Kern State Prison. As of February 2021, DeAngelo is incarcerated in protective custody at California State Prison, Corcoran,